YQuynh is a proud alumna of Montgomery College and of the University of Maryland. And she's also a lifelong scholar in the Southern Management Leadership Program, which used to be the Hillman Entrepreneurs Program. So in 2017 is when YQuynh graduated from MC with her Associate of Arts in Business Administration. And then she transferred as a member of the Southern Management Leadership Program to the College Park campus of the University of Maryland, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Communication and also her minor in Technology Entrepreneurship. After graduation, YQuynh continued her journey to answer a question that followed her throughout her education. What do I want to do for a career? She explored various career options for the next 2 years while overcoming challenges, which will be familiar to many of you who go through this process, including things like post-graduation depression and what she terms as profound uncertainty, and which is part of the topic that she's going to be talking to us tonight about. So now YQuynh's personal development has led her to her three current positions. She is the virtual event coordinator for Montgomery Community Media. She is the video conference moderator for Montgomery County Council, and she's a social media content creator for Better Business Collective. So let's welcome YQuynh, and I'm going to go ahead and you can share your screen and introduce yourself and get started.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for the lovely introduction. It's certainly a pleasure to be speaking at the SMLP Speaker Seminar. When I was in SMLP, it was called the Hillman Entrepreneurs, and it was a cohort of 30 scholars over at Montgomery College, and we transferred together and joined with the Prince George's Community College cohort. And then together we were a group of 60 over at University of Maryland, all studying various different kinds of majors, which was the best part about being an SMLP, because it wasn't strictly business majors and accounting or finance, but it was a whole array of different majors. I myself was a communication major, and I had a couple of friends who were in kinesiology, of course, finance, engineering. It was a whole array, and it was such a wonderful time in my life. And part of the program, I definitely spent hours listening to people share their experiences, hoping to draw inspiration to guide me through my college career. And now here I am doing something very similar as well. And I'm hoping I can reach to potential SMLP students, current college students, people who are thinking about transferring, currently in the process, or preparing to graduate as well. I most certainly faced uncertainties in college when it came to making decisions from finding the right major, the right job, the right classes. And I'm sure there are similar uncertainties in your lives as college students. Again, I was in the 2016-2019 cohort. I had a lot of good memories, a lot of moments where we were doing a lot of public speaking, team building exercises. I've made a lot of great friends there. It was a great opportunity for me to build my network, built a lot of lifelong friendships as well. It was just definitely a wonderful time, and I got to develop my leadership skills, public speaking skills, and experience a lot of things I never thought I would. And it definitely shaped me into the person I am. But the process of becoming who I am hasn't stopped, and it hasn't necessarily stop when I graduated or when I got into the program or when I transferred. There's still a lot of moments in my life where I feel as if I am still learning and I am still becoming. And when I'm lost in big and small moments in my life, I think about Michelle Obama and how she once said, for me, becoming isn't about arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it instead as a forward motion, a means of evolving, a way to reach continuously toward a better self. And uncertainty is most definitely part of the process of you becoming and defining yourself. Again, the process doesn't stop once you get a job or you transfer. It's a continuous process, and it is up to you to make choices that define you. And you make a lot of these choices in college. College isn't necessarily supposed to solidify your professional and personal interests. Instead, college offers opportunities and experiences that you use to define your own future. And this is something I was taught and I learned in the many seminars that I attended. Many of my mentors told me that. Rebecca told me that. The former director, Gold Bronco, she emphasized that a lot. And it was the sort of thing you constantly hear, and it gets to a point where you say, yes, I know, I make my own decisions, but I can tell you this, that you just have to get outside of college and experience. And then once you find yourself in a situation where you realize you're going by your book and not through a 4-year degree plan provided by a school, that's when you realize, oh my gosh, I get to define what I do from now on. And it seems like a very simple realization, but it feels very surreal because, you know, you're in the steering wheel now, and you always was, but this time you're calling the shots. And throughout college, I convinced myself that my degree defined my career, and the rest of my life is solidified and dedicated to the things related to my major, communication, and my degree. And communication, public relations, and marketing, I felt like those subjects, those fields were my best bets for outside of college, because I spent my 4 years building my resume, taking classes on those subjects. And in the back of my mind, honestly, I wasn't even sure if that's what I wanted, but it was all I knew. I worked so hard building my resume, reaching out and building my network. I invested so much time and so much energy that at the time it felt like it couldn't have been for nothing. And it hasn't been for nothing. These moments of uncertainty contribute to the values I have today. The degrees don't define who I am, but I define what those degrees mean to me and what I can do with them. At Montgomery College, University of Maryland, SMLP, folks like Rebecca, they offered me the tools and guidance to shape my future, but it was up to me, and it still is, to make those choices of where I want to go and who I want to become. I'm most certainly still learning how to embrace uncertainty and the possibility from starting scratch. And it's definitely scary, but based on my experience, I've developed a few things that I try to incorporate in my daily life. And the first thing is to embrace uncertainty with an open mind. If you don't know where you're going in your education, your career, just remind yourself of the basics. What are the things you enjoy? Look at your job, your major, your hobbies and interests, and ask yourself, why did you choose it in the first place? Ask yourself that one simple question: why? Why does your job motivate and bring you joy? Is it the logistics basics of setting up a software program for a business, the feeling of fulfillment when you help someone, are these things you want to feel in your career? I asked myself why I should consider applying to my current position at Montgomery Community Media. And financial stability, location, proximity, and the work culture were all very strong factors. But my real why was because the responsibilities met my strengths: organization, scheduling, improvising under pressure, producing. These were all things I liked doing and things I learned through college. When you keep asking yourself why, you'll soon find parts of yourself that contributes to your big picture, your passion in life. A big part of piecing together your big picture is knowing what you want. By experiencing new opportunities, the picture seems to get clearer. So you've got to seize every opportunity that comes your way. You'll never know what you may learn or gain from that experience unless you explore it. Now, I want to share a story, and let me take you back to my first job out of college. It was 2019. I just got out of college. I was looking for jobs. I was one of the very few students in SMLP who graduated and didn't have a job lined up. And that really scared me because I felt like I had to be matching everyone and having a plan right after college. But the truth is, I didn't. I liked my degree, communication, and it definitely prepared me and gave me the realization of the specific things I enjoyed, but I didn't know what I was going to do with that major. Communication itself, the idea of it is such a broad study. You can do anything with communications, going into news, politics, marketing, business, public relations, which was the most common subject over at University of Maryland. So based on my own experience and my own resume, I decided to stick with marketing. I was definitely unsure if it was right for me, but because I had the experience, I had taken classes, I figured I should give it a shot. So I started as a marketing administrative assistant at a company located in Montgomery County, and it was a small business. So I definitely wore a lot of different hats, and my responsibilities branched outside of marketing. At the time, I was uncomfortable with the idea of trying new things because it was just foreign. I just didn't know. But I learned it was the best way for me to narrow down my strengths and interests. So I ran with it. And I'm so glad I did. And I experienced trade show planning, skincare formulation, operational management, which ended up being the main focus in my job by the time I left. I was now a marketing and operations assistant working with local businesses to large corporations such as Walmart, Target, Amazon. I learned how to use a range of EDI and customer management software. And these were things I never saw myself doing before, not in college at least. But if I didn't say yes to those opportunities at my job, I wouldn't have realized that I enjoy working with IT and software. So that's how I face new challenges in my life. I embrace it, I keep an open mind, and explore every opportunity I'm handed. That's what I learned at Montgomery College and University of Maryland when I was unsure of my future after graduation. It's what I learned while I was searching for a career, and it's what I'm still learning and still practicing. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, that's a great story, YQuynh. I've heard very similar things, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. But it does. We all face uncertainty and have moments where we're tested. The one thing that's true about humans is we all have aspirations and dreams. We also have fears and insecurities. Our minds may be clouded with doubt that we won't reach our goals. My goal is to gain insight and familiarize myself in video production right now. You have your own thing. Maybe it's to find an internship, build your network, maybe to create a self-care routine to practice daily. Maybe you're trying to start writing your transfer essay, but you can't quite pick up that pen and start writing because you fear you don't have what it takes. Well, if no one's told you, I won't. You've got it. Whatever it is, we're all going to face it. It may be scary and new, but you've got to embrace it and keep yourself grounded. When we say yes to experiences, foreign or not, it opens a new door and we're faced with uncertainties. Stay open-minded and explore those opportunities. You never know what you may learn about yourself. I'm still becoming and reaching toward a better self. I hope my story brings insight and direction in your story and moves you forward in your journey of becoming.
So listen, I have some questions. I suspect others were listening so intently that they haven't put them in our chat form yet. So feel free to go ahead and do that. But I did have some questions for you that came up from what you were talking about.
Sure.
And you mentioned that I love this thought that education is not necessarily to get you to your career goal, but it's an opportunity to help you learn what you enjoy. I thought that really resonated for me, because very often we think, okay, so what do I need to do to get my degree, and what is that degree going to do in terms of my career? But there's so much uncertainty, like you mentioned. So I'm wondering, when you transferred or while you were at Montgomery College, what are some things that you did to help you find out what it was that you enjoyed?
That's a great question. When I transferred to University of Maryland, first and foremost, it was definitely helpful to have, my fellow scholars, the SMLP students with me. We were a group of 60 transfer students. Some of us didn't know the College Park campus very well, and we were just so excited to, be in a new area and just run wild and, explore different clubs. And that was most certainly an exciting time for me. But I'm sure I could speak for them when I say that, when we transferred, it felt almost like a culture shock. There were new resources, new educational programs that we could take a look at to help us. It was definitely foreign, but what helped me the most was to just put myself out there, get myself familiar with my professors, the students, my classmates, and just ask a bunch of questions. That I believe that, you've got to ask questions, as many as you can, no matter how silly you might sound or how repetitive. It's such an important thing, and you've got to ask questions and, learn from other people's stories. And when you ask questions, I definitely think it's important to be an active listener. So that means you're listening to the people you're speaking to, understanding what their story is. Don't just listen to get your word in, but you've got to listen to understand their experiences, because these are different people who may have had different life experiences before they came to the university, and you never know what people have gone through, what they've learned. So asking questions, learning about people will definitely help you widen your own perspective and help you figure out, maybe this person did this, that could be a source of inspiration for me. Or if you realize that someone has a specific path, you can take a look at that and ask yourself, how can I take that person's story and incorporate the lessons that they've learned and implement that into my story and my goals and where I want to be. So familiarizing myself and putting myself out there in different clubs, in the classes, getting to know your professors and asking them what their experiences are is what I strongly recommend.
That's terrific. So there is a question here, and I think it's related to what you were just talking about, and also my curiosity. If you can think of like a specific example of something that you did that was outside your comfort zone, or something where you didn't you were taking a risk in trying something. Can you think of like an example that you might share with us, and how that might have helped you diversify your skills? That's the question that's being asked. How does that help you learn new things, how to do new things? Like a specific example of that would be helpful.
I have the perfect one that stays with me for a really long time since I've graduated. When I transferred to the University of Maryland, I joined the Maryland LEAD program, which is a student-run program partnered with the LCSL office on campus. And what they do is they create a lot of they create programs, 2 programs each year related to teaching students on how to develop their leadership skills and how they can take their identity and apply it to who they are as leaders. And so I started off as a participant, and I went to one of the retreats. One of the retreats was the Mosaic retreat, which was more focused on identity and diversity, and how those factors can, impact our leadership skills and our perspective in the outside world. And I loved it. It was a great way for me to meet new people, learn about their experiences, how their identities based on, their background affects the way they feel they can speak out loud. So that was a fantastic part for me. And I was so intrigued that I decided to apply and become a facilitator. And this was definitely a long shot for me, because at the time I wasn't really much involved in a lot of clubs. The only kind of public speaking I had was strictly through, class presentations, doing elevator speeches, and of course, the courses at SMLP, where, we did a couple of big presentations. But this was going to be the first time where I was on my own, and I was going to work with folks that I didn't know, and put myself out there. And it was very nerve-wracking, I won't lie, but I just kept telling myself that, this is what you want to do. This is what you want to do. You want to practice your public speaking skills. You want to learn more about your own leadership, and you want to help other people find their own voice as a leader. And so I was a facilitator with MLead for about a year. I facilitated 2 retreats. One of them, again, was the Mosaic Diversity Leadership Retreat, and then the other one was Maryland LEAD Advance. And I facilitated and I led conversations and discussions on how people view themselves as a leader, what leadership means to them. And while I was, helping these people and guiding them through these prompts that we prepared for, I learned a lot of things about myself and what leadership means to me as, as a woman, as a person of color. It was very an eye-opening experience for me. And there were definitely moments where I felt self-doubt. I wasn't sure, I was pressed for time. We had to prepare for facilitation, and there were moments where I just felt like I'm not sure I can. How am I going to, get this whole list of this whole packet and then teach these students when I don't even know if I'm being a leader. But through those moments of uncertainty, you really have yourself at that time. So you've got to tell yourself that, you've got this. No matter what you do, when you try new things, at the end of the day, it's you've got to be the one who pushes yourself. And sure, I had a really wonderful team of facilitators, and everyone was so wonderful, so kind and helpful and supportive, but it was up to me to find that voice. And I use my voice to help other students find their voice.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This program sounds really interesting. And so I'm wondering if anybody else is thinking, I really want to join this. Can you tell us again the name of the organization that sponsored this Mosaic program?
Sure. It's Maryland Lead Program.
Maryland Leads Program.
Yes. And I believe one of the graduate coordinators, her name is Shakia Asmoa. I hope I'm not butchering that, but she is a very lovely and wonderful individual who definitely impacted my time there. So if needed, I could also just send out, the link for that as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That would be great. I just, before we go on to the next question, just to kind of reiterate what I heard you say that I think is so important for us, for all of us, is that when you have to teach somebody, you're learning at the same time. It sounds like you were in a position where you were facilitating, which means that you're helping other people learn things, but you get so much yourself out of that experience. So I think that it just goes to show that, our growth continues in multiple ways, and that's really nice.
Certainly.
There is a question here from Emily. And I think it's a great question. She wants to know if you have any tips for adjusting to a big college campus when you're coming from a school like Montgomery College or Prince George's, when you're coming from a community college and then you're suddenly on this huge campus with very different environment. What tips do you have for students who are getting ready to go through that process?
That's a great question. I've got to put myself back in my shoes like 2 or 3 years ago. Let's see, something I wish that I knew when I first transferred was to not lose myself and my interests when I'm, surrounded by thousands of different students. When you transfer from a small college to a university like Maryland, there's so many people around, there's so many clubs and organizations you can join. And I most recommend joining as many clubs as you can to familiarize yourself on what interests you have. And the way I feel like the best way for you to start that is ask yourself and remind yourself, what interests do you have? Is it, was it leadership? That was for me, leadership. Facilitation? Is it activism? Is it sports? Joining community and cultural clubs? You've got to ask yourself what you enjoy. And when you ask yourself that, you will surely lead yourself to where you need to be. It gives you kind of like that step forward of what you can explore. And then from there on, it's all about just navigating your way through that and asking yourself more questions. Did I like this experience? Is this for me? What about it makes me want to, come back or stay away from? You most definitely cannot lose yourself when you enter a new area or a new stage in your life. You've got to remember, what are my values? What do I like? what matters most to me. And when you remind yourself those kinds of things, then you will be reminded of, where passions lie. And so I definitely recommend, going to different clubs and meeting new people and broadening your perspective and seeing, how they can impact your time at college. So definitely going to clubs, again, asking questions with your professor, and also branching out your network is a very big thing. Finding friends, classmates, talking to people and learning about them and see how they can help you.
That's excellent. And that's excellent advice too. I hear you saying the two things. One is that you're going to be doing something that you enjoy, which is great in terms of continuing to build your skill set and just being comfortable. And also that you're going to meet people who are like-minded, right? There's a lot of, particularly for people who don't have a program like ours, where you do move with people you already have relationships with. If you're going in there and you don't know anybody, then it's a wonderful way to start to build your tribe. And I think
That's right.
Yeah.
And I do believe, we should chase our interests, but it's also important for us to, see what's on the other side, the opposition. Sometimes, nowadays with news and media, a lot of the times we get our information purely based on sources who already match our views, when it's also important to listen to the other side. Why do they think in that perspective? How do they get there? So definitely going out of your comfort zone and trying new things, even though you may not agree with them, is definitely a worthwhile experience.
Yeah, that's great. So the next question leads directly from that, I think, because it sounds as if one of the things you found out is that there was this wealth of opportunities. There's so many clubs, so many different things you can do, things that you already know how to do, and things that are maybe oppositional, as you were just saying. How did you, particularly when you first transferred, because there's so many things you're also just trying to learn, how did you prioritize what you were going to where you were going to put your energy?
I think for me to get my priorities in line, it started with me keeping a journal, a schedule, an agenda, whether it be in person or on Google Calendar, listing out your days and blocking out specific times for, classes, times to study, is so important, because, when you go to college, there are a million things happening around you, a million things that you've got to have your focus on, whether it be preparing for a presentation, doing your homework, going to professors' offices after hours, study groups. And there's just a lot of things that your mind might focus on. There's so many things that are happening that you've got to keep in touch with time and keep in touch with what you need to do for that week, that day, that hour. Staying focused is so important. And the best way I found is to keep a schedule that you look at least 5 times a day. At least 5 times a day. You've got to refer back to your plan. And I used to block out certain times for when I was going to have lunch, when I was going to, go see a professor, go meet a friend, go to a club. I even marked out the times when I was supposed to be riding the bus to get to campus. Keeping yourself accountable and having a schedule really puts your mind on focus on what you need to do. So, and when you have it all laid out in front of you, it gets easier for you to decide what matters more. What do I need to prioritize today? What you need to base your focus on? And to do that, you've got to be self-aware. And I most definitely think it starts by keeping yourself in check through a schedule.
That's so interesting, YQuynh, because I remember going over to University of Maryland, going into the SMLP lounge, and one of the students in the program came in and he said, "I've got to show you this. It's my schedule." It was his weekly schedule. He said, "I went over to, I guess, student services or some office at the college where they helped me put this thing together." This was his second semester. His first semester had been basically a bust, and then he got the tool, right? So
Right.
I'm really glad. I hope the rest of you are listening really carefully, because I think that I've heard firsthand that that can make all the difference between a transition that's successful and one where that can be miserable until you get the tool.
Oh, for
So
sure.
yeah.
When for me, at least before I kept a schedule, I tried to make mental notes in my head and thought about, that I would remember later in the day. But guess what? I forgot, and it's not a feeling you enjoy. I almost actually forgot I had class a couple of times if I didn't write it down. It's those kinds of small things that have a longer lasting impact in your time in college and even outside of college. I'm at the council building almost every week. My schedule fluctuates. Sometimes I'll have a 9:30 meeting. And if it's a 9:30 meeting, then I've got to be here in the office preparing at 9 a.m. And if it's at 1:30, then I've got to be here at 1. And I've got to plan out in advance how I'm going to get there, how much time it takes. So it's so challenging to keep mental notes. And at a point for me, it just got so overwhelming that I just had to sit down, take the time to prioritize myself and what I needed to do that week and plan ahead, because, an organized mind is an organized life.
What are the biggest differences between being a community college student and then being in a 4-year university? I think that was one of the things that this student with the planner told me. He says, "When I was in community college, I didn't need one of these. Now I need it." So are there any other differences that you think would be helpful for somebody who's getting ready to move in that direction that they should be aware of?
Well, the biggest change that I found when I transferred to Maryland was the difference in class sizes and sometimes the teaching styles. I've been in some classes where I was one of 30, and then I've been in classes where I was one of 200. And it makes a huge difference, of course. And your professors, what I really loved about Montgomery College was that most of the classes were sizes of 30. And the best part about that was that you could actually build a relationship with your professors and the students around you. I'm not saying you can't do that in a class full of 200, but surely it's more challenging. And, these professors have so many students. This is only one class, 200 students. And then they have another class, in the next hour, the next day, and that's like 200 more students. They got like 500 something students that they've got to prioritize their time. And so when I transferred and I saw the difference of classes, I had to prepare and plan ahead the times that I wanted to meet with these professors and get extra help or ask questions to the TAs. And it was surely different, but the fact is, you just have to adjust. You have to, improvise in the moment. When you're in that big of a classroom, you really have to prioritize yourself. And that goes back to me saying, asking yourself why. If you're going to be in these classes and you want to make time for your studies, ask yourself, how can I get there? Does it mean that I have to stay an hour after class? Does it mean I have to go in at 6 p.m. to office hours, even though my day ends at 12 p.m.? Sometimes you've got to make sacrifices and work around your schedule to really help yourself and get the benefit you need. So the classes were definitely a big difference when I got there. And something unrelated to academics was probably the social life on campus. Over at Montgomery College, I was primarily on the Germantown campus, and so there weren't a lot of students, lounging around and hanging out. During the summer and spring, there would be some, but usually there weren't a lot of students, and that's okay. Some people enjoy that kind of community. But when I got to University of Maryland, you don't really get a choice. You see people, swinging off of trees, laying in hammocks, people playing Frisbee. Near the business school, there were actually students who were taking part in a Quidditch club. For all you Harry Potter lovers out there, there are so many things happening, and it's definitely hard to keep up. But that was definitely the fun part for me. Sometimes there would just be events on campus, and on my way to class, I would just stop by and, introduce myself, get to know these people. What are you doing here? Why? What's your goal? What's your mission? And so that was a way for me to also broaden my perspective and learn about what are the goals for other students, other staff members. So definitely the social life was a lot different. And I most certainly had a fun time there as well.
There were a few journalism class professors who reached out to me about your being on camp or on the program tonight. And so we may have some journalism or some communications students who would like to get some insight from you about that as what you studied and what was that like when you transferred from a journalism program, say, or a program at the community college? Was it different?
So when I was at Montgomery College, I did business. And then when I transferred to Maryland, I majored in communication. And over at Maryland, the communication program is divided into 4 specific focuses, specialties. That's better. 4 different specialties. And one of them was general, which is the one I did. Another was social influence, rhetoric, and then public relations, which was the most common specialty that comm students chose to do. And for me, at least, I chose to do general, but I took a lot of classes that were related to the rhetoric and social influence field. So one of the professors there, who's a wonderful woman, Dr. Carly S. Woods, she had a lot of classes related to learning about history and archival studies. It was something I didn't know I would be interested in, learning about history, American history, how we came to where we are, how communities of color had an impact on the making of America. And so those were the types of classes that I chose to take. And so I didn't take much of public relations, but from what I'm familiar with. I was actually part of the UCA, Undergraduate Communication Association, and they had a lot of opportunities related to public relations. They had a great network there. And based on my experience with, talking with those students who were in PR, there were so many classes that they could take where they could learn specifically, sports journalism, or classes related to, what media means, how media influences what we see, what specific aspects of marketing can we use to influence the way we see things, or the way consumers see things. So there were a lot of classes such as that, but I was mainly focused on learning about rhetoric.
That's so important. Your comments also just make me realize that one thing that students don't necessarily know, but it can be very helpful. If you have an idea about a major, you may not know that there are all kinds of variations to that major, or exactly what it entails. And University of Maryland, I know specifically, has a person who's considered a pre-transfer counselor, who can help you kind of parse through that. So whatever your major is, it's really important to have someone. It can be just a transfer counselor at the community college. It can be a pre-transfer counselor who comes from the university that you're thinking of applying to find out from them more about the majors that you're interested in pursuing. So that,
Yeah, and I'm sure it was definitely for all majors, but for communication majors, we were expected to have semester check-ins with our designated advisor, and while it was mandatory, I definitely recommend you have more than just once a semester check-in with your advisor, because these are folks who are specialized in the major and understand what resources are available by the university. And so they have this expertise, and they are there to help you and guide you. So it's always best to really take advantage of, their open door. They're always there. And whenever you're thinking about like switching majors, or choosing a specific specialty, it's important to really reach out to the folks who work at the university, so that they can give you a great idea on where you want to go in the university. And someone over at Montgomery College who was such a great help to me at the time was Anne Schleicher. I'm not so sure if she's there anymore, but she, excuse me, she was I guess you could call her, she was the bridge for the Hillman students and overall to the university campus. And she was such a pleasure. She was so open, ready to help, and she knew the ins and outs of how you can transfer. And there are so many people like that over at the university and over at Montgomery College, but we can't expect these people to help us. We have to take the first step to really get help for ourselves. And the first step in doing that is meeting these people and asking them and learning about them, and trying to see what do that will help me move forward in my career, or in my major, in my education outside of college.
yeah, and they know things that that other people don't know. That's a great point. And Schleicher is now part-time, working pretty much only with our program at this time, but we do have other transfer counselors on all of the campuses who are, that's their level of expertise, and they beg students to come and talk to them before they make mistakes, right? Before they take a class they shouldn't have taken, or do something that'll be an impediment later on. What is one thing that you recommend that transfer students experience at UMD? Like, is there something that's over there that the normal, person doesn't necessarily know about it? From the inside scoop, what's the one thing you do not want to miss?
I don't think I could really even say one thing. And I, my answer, I guess, has to do a lot more with the social aspect rather than the academics. Yes, of course, it's important to get ahead of your studies and make sure you're doing your best in class and keeping up, not missing deadlines. But that's not all what your education has to be about. There are so many opportunities there to meet people and experience. There are so many clubs and so many events where you can broaden your network. So I would have to say that, going to networking events there is probably the most important part in over at the university, because, when you branch out and you meet new people, whether it be the students in your major, outside your major, the staff members, the professors, counselors, there are always folks who are coming to the university trying to search for students who could make a difference over at their organization or at their workplace, or yeah, and you never know who's going to be there. A lot of the times, like for me, I wish I had taken advantage of that. Now, granted, I did have a lot of opportunity to network thanks to the SMLP, but something I wish I did more was to go out of my own way and go to more networking events. It's such a great way to prepare you for life after college, the workforce, and really understand, what possibilities could be there once I leave college. Because, nothing is forever. Everything is most definitely temporary, and it's very hard to accept, but it's the truth, and so it would be a shame to waste that opportunity and not network with people. And college is for education, yes, but it's also for you to gain new experiences. And what best way to gain a new experience by learning about someone else's? It's such a great opportunity for you to take another step in finding yourself, finding what you may be interested in, what kinds of things you might not be interested in. The only best way to figure out where you want to go and who you want to be is to, do process of elimination. And that starts with just talking to people and gathering information on, what you want to do and what they do. How can their experiences relate to you? Is that something, you meet a lot of people on the campus, and sometimes it just comes and goes when you meet people. Sometimes you'll meet them one day and you will never see them again until, unless you exchange information with them. And that's networking. Networking will be your most important part in experiencing in college, aside from your studies, of course.
And what a beautiful way for us to close out here tonight, because you are part of this process right now. The rest of you have had an opportunity now to network with YQuynh, and these things, these interactions that we have, whether they're in the food court or at a job fair, just make sure you make the most of every opportunity you have to meet new people. I just really want to thank you for coming in, YQuynh, and being part of this process, and thank all of the rest of you for joining us. It is so good to see the continued community at work here. This is really awesome.
Thank you for having me.